Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Barry Watts with WealthCare has the strategies you need to plan for a successful retirement. Whether you're planning for retirement, saving to live out your dreams, or looking to grow your wealth, Barry has resources to guide you every step of the way. Barry and the team at WealthCare develop customized plans to help you achieve your financial goals. Welcome to Watts on Wealth with Barry Watts.
Inflation is a major concern for all of us, especially those of us getting ready to retire. It never sleeps. It just keeps on going. And no matter how much or how little you have, inflation affects all of us. On the Watts on Wealth show today, boy, we're glad you're with us. We're going to tell you why you should not ignore inflation, how to combat it, and live the retirement you've worked so hard for. Welcome, everybody. I'm Ralph Hipp, joined by Barry Watts, the founder and CEO of Springfield's WealthCare Corporation. Barry, it's always a pleasure to see and be back with you. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm fine. I'm glad to be back with you and with our viewers today, Ralph.
We're going to learn a lot in this next half hour. First of all, Barry, why can retirees be the hardest hit by inflation?
Well, healthcare is a big reason, Ralph. When Obamacare passed, it had provisions in it that limited the profits that insurance companies could make. Now, you might think that's a good thing. It set them as a percentage of total healthcare costs. But if you're an executive running an insurance company and you're limited to a percentage of total healthcare costs, the only way for you to make more money for your company is to be sure that the total cost of healthcare goes up. And so that means more tests, more exams, more charges, and that allows the insurance company's overall profits to be larger. According to Healthcare Tracker, since 2000, the overall cost of living for healthcare alone has increased 120%. That's
Wow.
about 50% more than the cost of living for all other goods and services. And so after healthcare, then comes housing. Now, 35 years ago, Ralph, I built a new house for $70,000 in Columbia, Missouri, out in the nice new part of town, as a matter of fact. And that house today is valued at about $247,000. Mm-hmm. Now, when my wife and I first got married, that $70,000 was a very nice brand new house. And yet just months ago, my daughter and my new son-in-law bought a very similar house. It's a 30-year-old house, so it's not new. And their first home cost them $360,000. So my new house payment years ago was $500 a month. The kids' payment for a similar house that's not new is 5 times greater, about $2,200 a month. And so what's happening is young people are being priced out, but retirees are facing the same kind of economic pressure maintaining their housing. So inflation is a big, insidious problem. That's why we need to rein it in. And the big problem of what drives inflation is government spending and the government printing dollars that they don't need to spend. Because when they print dollars, those dollars compete against the dollars that are in your pocket and allow you to buy less and less.
And it's a situation we continue to hear about on the news, which affects us directly, government overspending.
Well, we do, and it's frustrating and aggravating, and I'd like to go up there and knock some heads, but I haven't been able to make that happen. But I think it's very important that we get a handle on this.
As long as you're staying here helping people around the Ozarks to retire, yeah.
Well, that's the point, Ralph. Let me just point out that I'm not sure how much influence we can have in Washington and how much chance there is to fix that particular problem. But if I can teach people here in the Ozarks how to sidestep that problem and work their way around it successfully, then we'll just let the rest of them eat cake.
On Washington, Barry, Social Security and cost of living adjustments, you mentioned that earlier, and it's not helping us enough, is it?
Well, not to the degree that it needs to. You know, a few years ago, Social Security actually changed the way they calculate their cost of living adjustments. And so now when the government reports out what the new cost of living is, how much inflation was last year, well, seniors don't necessarily get that much boost in their Social Security because they say that seniors have a different inflation rate than the rest of the population. Now, isn't that interesting? I think seniors are paying the same amount for a gallon of milk, the same amount for a gallon of gasoline, the same amount for a bottle of Excedrin down at the pharmacy. So I think that's a silly thing. I think that was government trying to shave a few dollars off the back of seniors to support government. I'm calling BS on that, Ralph.
Well, Barry, we have usually our 401ks, we have our Social Security, and we may have a pretty good pension. How are pensions affected by the rate of inflation?
Well, less and less people are having pensions, Ralph, but they still do exist, and I think that's a good thing. In fact, for some of our clients, we actually build private pensions for them. And so what you have to realize is where inflation starts having an impact is not on the pension income, but on the overall spending needs. And the problem is whether or not the income side, pensions being a part of that, keep up with the spending needs. And in some cases, they aren't doing that. Now, some people who come in have got a pension that has a great cost of living adjustment. Some of them have some very rich cost of living adjustments, and good for them. But a lot of them, here's your pension, here's the amount of money you receive, and that's what you're going to receive every month for the rest of your life. So there's no cost of living adjustment on some pensions. So you need to look at your pension, figure out if you do have a cost of living adjustment. If you do, good for you. But if you don't have a cost of living adjustment, then you've got a problem because the cost of living is going to keep going up and your pension's not going to compete with that. And that could potentially be a reason to consider taking actually a full cash out on your pension and receiving it in a lump sum instead of taking the monthly pension from your employer.
Barry, thanks for everything so far. A lot more to go on our show, and we'll this year we'll be seeing how the Federal Reserve responds to interest rates and the borrowing rate in cooling that rate of inflation.
Let's hope they get it cooled off.
Yeah, great to hear about it. The hot topic of inflation on the rise, and it could spell trouble for your retirement. How can you keep that from impacting your retirement savings? We'll talk about that more with Barry in our next segment right after this. Don't go away.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy, but with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work towards your goals. You need a plan to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income plan is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
Barry and I are so grateful and glad you're joining us for today's Watts on Wealth TV show as we talk about inflation, a cause of concern for many of us getting ready to retire. Barry, it's clear that inflation is real and could possibly stand in the way of our dreams of retirement. And how do we help plan for this with inflation hanging over our heads the way it is?
Well, first of all, you wake up, smell the coffee, and you plan for it. You have to address this particular issue because when your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep can become your downfall. That's the way I was taught about it down in Stone County.
I like the way you said that.
So, you know, what can you do about inflation? Well, for some people, the answer is I'm just going to wait and retire later. So I'll have less years than I'm having to draw on my money. Some people say, well, I'm going to go ahead and retire, but I'm going to retire on less. So I'll be spending less money, taking less out of my account. I can stretch my accounts further. I don't know if those are good ways to do it or not. I mean, you want to get busy about being retired, I think. One of the ways that I would suggest that's really helpful is to trim your taxes. Pay special attention to taxes because we can do some things tax strategy wise that may over your retirement lifetime save you a couple of $100,000 a year in some cases. And so if you trim those taxes, that could be just the money in savings that you need to stretch your accounts out for the rest of your life. And what you have to realize, Ralph, is there are things that you want to invest in to deal with inflation and things that you don't. For example, in 2022, when we got inflation soaring, a part of soaring inflation was also increasing interest rates. And as increasing interest rates came to be, people who owned existing bonds saw those bonds fall in value. In some cases, retirees losing a quarter to a third of their retirement in the last year that they were working before they went into retirement. So obviously, they started kind of hamstrung when it came to dealing with inflation. So there's a lot to be aware of here. The most important step is be aware, pay attention, and be sure you have a strategy and that your advisor is working a cogent strategy to solve these problems and not just kind of dismissing you and saying, well, we'll invest in stocks and it'll be okay. It's not that simple.
Right. And it's not a DIY thing. You sure need some expert advice on these very complicated topics.
You know, it is not DIY. I don't think retirement is DIY. And that doesn't mean that retirees aren't smart people and don't do well and haven't done well. There are just a whole new set of potholes that you experience in retirement that most people don't know about. And for example, most people don't know how to save on taxes. And that alone can be worth a couple of $100,000. It takes a long time for advisory fees to equal a couple of $100,000.
Well, you're so good at that too. Well, you also get your raises and bonuses in your working years. Inflation doesn't feel quite as harsh when that's happening for you. So how do you help somebody factor inflation into their spending in retirement, Barry?
Really simple, Ralph. Build it into their retirement income plan. So what we do is we start with how much money you're going to need in retirement, whatever your number is, $5,000 a month, $7,000 a month, $10,000 a month. I call that your sitting on the porch money. What do you need deposited into your bank account every month to allow you to just get up every day and sit on the porch? And then you don't need to worry about it from there. Here's why. A lot of people, when I ask them that question, you can see they stop and they begin thinking in their brain, oh, well, it's this much now, but with inflation, it's going to be that much. And they're trying to give me one number that'll cover 30 or 40 years. No, don't do that. Instead, give me the number today, now, in today's dollars, and let me do the math for you that shows you how that's going to have to increase every year between now and the end of your retirement.
Barry, are there any sources of income we have which could be, as we say, inflation-proof, or things we can make inflation-proof in retirement?
Well, there are ways to build automatic inflation cost of living adjustments into your retirement income, but most of those ways, Ralph, are not guaranteed. If inflation moves from 3% to 4%, well, the inflation adjustment probably works. But if we had 15% inflation one year, and by the way, you and I have lived through 15% inflation
we have
3 and 4 decades ago, well, then those adjustments probably could not be made. And if they were made, they probably would not be sustainable. You see, Ralph, I like to say inflation is the great equalizer. It affects Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives alike. I used to say that in Springfield, the only person who could withstand 8 or 9% inflation is our favorite son, Johnny Morris, who owns Bass Pro Shops. And so I used to say, for common folks like you and me, we can't deal with inflation at 9 or 10%. It'll kill us. Johnny's the only guy who could survive it. And I realized I was wrong. You know why? Because at 8 or 9% inflation, guys like you and me can't afford to go to Bass Pro Shop and buy fishing baits.
So Johnny's concerned about that.
So Johnny's touched about it too, yes. So inflation affects everybody, and it'll destroy people like you and me, Ralph. We can't afford to live long with that kind of inflation. And ultimately, it destroys even a person like Johnny who's got a lot of money. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's really going to hurt him in the end, but he's not going to have the business and the sales he has.
He'll take note of it.
Because people like you and I can't afford it.
Yeah, well, it affects businesses, large and small, and the huge corporations as well. We'd like to find out from Barry, how do we find the right help to put a plan together protecting us against inflation and maybe some of the other major risks we have in our economy right now?
Well, first, Ralph, you've got to be working with a retirement designer. Somebody who is focused on helping you design a retirement spending plan. If you'll think about it, all the years that you've been working and putting money into your 401k and your account is growing, we say that your account is accumulating. And there are people who kind of specialize in helping you accumulate. But when you get to the top of Mount Retirement and are ready to retire and come down the other side, you need a decumulation plan or a spending plan. And so you need to be making sure that the person who's helping you is not just an investment salesperson. It needs to be somebody who has special skill and training in learning how to help you spend in retirement and stretch your money so that it lasts throughout your retirement lifetime. And it starts with that sitting on the porch number that I mentioned, and then adding your cost of living adjustment to it. And then you've got to have investment returns that exceed the rate of inflation. Because if inflation is, let's say, 4% and your rate of return is 4%, those two cancel each other out and your money isn't growing. So you need, when inflation is 3%, to be earning 4% if you can. Or if inflation is 4%, you need to be earning 5%. So you're keeping up with inflation and putting a little money back. Because you know what, Ralph? You're not going to every year out-earn inflation as much as you want to. Well, and so you've got a plan for that.
It's right on our tail, right behind us, isn't it?
It is.
Well, we have more show ahead, Barry. Thanks for your expertise on that. Coming up, more to talk about on Watts on Wealth, the TV show, as Barry explains how your spending habits might change in retirement. Later on, we love to do this, tackle some of your big questions about retirement and finances as we open our mailbag. As Watts on Wealth, the TV show continues right after this.
Planning for retirement can be complicated. Helping create income that lasts, making sure your health care is covered, investing while managing risk, and don't forget about taxes. If you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. The good news is we have what you need to give you confidence to start planning for your ideal retirement, all in one convenient resource. You'll get answers to some of your biggest retirement questions in this easy-to-understand, practical resource. And best of all, there's no cost to you. Take the first step toward a confident retirement and get yours today.
Welcome back into our show. In today's Steps to Confidence, Barry explains how our spending habits might change as we go through retirement. Barry?
Thank you, Ralph. In this segment, we're going to talk about spending in retirement. That's the fun thing about retirement, being able to spend and enjoy your income without having to go out and earn it. Now, as you think about spending in retirement, and most people don't really know where to begin with that, I want you to imagine how much money you're going to spend in retirement this year and next year and 5 years from now and 10 years from now. What do you think is going to happen with that? If you aren't careful, a lot of people will set their spending level and say, well, I'm just going to spend this money each year in retirement. And I can tell you right up front, that's not true. Your spending, at least in retirement, is going to go something like this because the rising cost of living each year, inflation is going to cause you to have to spend a little bit more. Now, some people think that they're going to start really high with their retirement spending and get all of it done up front, do all the traveling, the bucket list kinds of things, have all the fun, and then over time that their spending will decline, going from your go-go years to your slow-go years to your no-go years. Other people see it a different way. They say, well, I'm going to start down here in retirement, but I know the rising cost of healthcare is going to drive my spending higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. So when I get to the end, those may be some of my most expensive years in retirement. We don't really know what your retirement spending is going to look like because it's different for every person. But I want to submit to you that I think your retirement spending may look more something like this. It started high on the edge, it dipped in the middle, and then it got high toward the end. In fact, if you'll think about it, if it starts high on one side, dips in the middle, and goes high on the other side, it forms a smile. And when we think about spending in retirement, we think about smiling. So where are you going to smile first? Well, when you immediately retire, you're going to do all the things that are on your bucket list. You're going to travel. You're going to take the kids to Disney World. You're going to remodel the house and put in the new kitchen, build the shop out back, buy the new boat. Whatever it is you're going to spend money on probably starts you out in retirement spending a little more. And after you've spent and spent and spent, one day you're going to kind of have spent the money that you needed to spend and have what you want to have. And it may be that your retirement spending then comes down in the middle to kind of a dip. And you're spending less in those years because you've already done all the things that you want to do. And you're still having a great lifestyle here and now, but you're not spending on those extra things. You've already bought the boat. You've already bought the motorhome. Now, here's what happens next. After you come down here to the dip in those middle years of retirement, you head toward the final years of retirement. And in the final years, many people climb out of the dip to the other side of retirement where they experience more and more costs and expenses related to healthcare. So what that does for you is it forms a spending smile from spending a lot early in retirement, less in the middle of retirement, and then once again more toward the end of retirement. That's how spending works for most people in retirement. Back to you, Ralph.
Well, thank you very much, Barry. And next on our show, we'll get some answers to your retirement questions in our popular Q&A segment. We'll be right back after this.
When it comes to planning for the future, time may not always be on your side. Think about your taxes. Tax rates are historically low right now, but they'll likely be higher in the future. Our current tax rates are set to expire in just a few short years. With the right planning and strategy, you might be able to cut your tax bill in the years to come. But don't wait until it's too late to take advantage of today's lower tax rates. Let us be your partner in planning for tomorrow so you can enjoy your retirement today.
Time once again to get to your questions from all around the Ozarks. And Barry, I'm going to put on my spectacles in case we have any fine print here.
All right.
Some particularly complicated situations as we check in with our first letter here. And our first question to you, Barry, comes from Bolivar. This is from Sarah. I'm worried about taxes when I retire. I've heard you mention using life insurance for tax-free income in retirement. Does that really work?
Well, thank you for your question, Sarah. And the answer is it only works on days that end in Y.
Got it?
Yes, it works. It's not even a new idea. For 200 years, people have taken tax-free income from properly structured, those are two key words there, properly structured life insurance policies. Now, about 75% of our clients use that type of strategy, combining tax-free income with long-term care planning, all wrapped up in a life insurance policy. So helping people like you understand how that works and how they can possibly use it. That's what we do every day at the WealthCare Corporation. And if you're interested in learning more about it, I'd invite you to reach out to us and let us see if we can't help you in the same way. I think you'll like what you learn.
Absolutely, you will. All right, here's our next question. This is from Ben in Lebanon, Missouri. My wife recently passed away, Barry, and I'm wondering if I need to think about being more conservative with my money. How do I figure out if there are better places for my money that keeps me from taking too much risk, especially right now?
Well, Ben, I'm very sorry to hear about your loss. I can only imagine how difficult that might be and how much trouble you might be in emotionally and really be humped up and just wanting to pull the covers over your head and certainly to pull away from risk. And maybe you should. There's no way to know without an analysis of your situation. And that analysis, Ben, I think starts with your income, making certain that you have enough income to last for your entire retirement lifetime. And of course, that's going to require a retirement income plan. Now, something else that we add to that is a personal risk profile. That's where we analyze the risk that you are comfortable with. We call it your risk appetite. And then we analyze your existing portfolio to see if the risk that you're taking currently is right according to your appetite, or if maybe you're taking too much risk. And we do see a fair number of widowers and widows in our practice at the WealthCare Corporation who sometimes are taking too much risk and who need to make some adjustments even before one of the spouses dies. We often have husbands and wives come into us together, and the unspoken message from the husband is, when I'm gone, I want you to take care of her. And that's an honor for us. So we're glad to help with those kinds of things. And if we can help you sort through that in your life as a widower or widower, well, then just reach out to us because we'd be honored to serve you in that way at the WealthCare Corporation.
Very good, Barry. All right, on to our next question, and this is from Dadeville, coming in from Martha. Martha says, Barry, my husband and I would like to retire in the next 5 years, but aren't sure when's the best time to start taking our Social Security. Big question. Can you help him out with that?
Well, sure, Martha, we can help you with that. Now, here's what we know. You'll get the largest Social Security check if you wait until age 70 to take it. And if you take it at the earliest date, at age 62, you'll get the smallest Social Security check. So the only way to know for sure is to know how long you will live. Now, I'm not clairvoyant. So what we can do is calculate your various Social Security options and incorporate each of them into a retirement income plan for you. And then from there, you can usually make the decision that seems best for you and your husband. A lot of people have this question, and we help them to answer it, and we can probably help you too. So just reach out to us at the WealthCare Corporation, and we'll help you figure out when's the right time for you to start taking Social Security.
Absolutely. As for me, I took Social Security and retired at 68 and a half, so there's a pretty good sweet spot
So
there.
you were full retirement age.
Yeah.
And that means now I can pay you the big bucks for hosting this show, and as I do, Social Security doesn't penalize you. The IRS doesn't penalize you for the money you're earning. But if you'd started earning that money back prior to full retirement age, you'd pay a penalty for every dollar I paid you. Maybe I should have hired you then, and I could have done it cheaper.
Oh, yeah. See, he's got advice for me as well. Let's get to more advice for you. And another question from Mark in Mount Vernon. Mark says, I watch your show. Thank you, Mark, for that. And I hear you talking about having more than one place to get income from in retirement. What do you recommend?
Well, Mark, that's like asking your doctor, I've heard you recommend different medicines. Which one should I take? There's no way to know without a specific examination of your situation, Mark. Because what works for you is totally different than what works for Martha in Dadeville or Ben in Lebanon or Sarah up in Bolivar. Now, most everyone is going to get Social Security, and I assume that that will be your first source of income. You might have a pension on top of that, and if you do, that's great, although that pension might trigger Social Security taxation, so that's a reason that you might actually not want to take the pension and might want to take it in a tax-free lump sum and defer it over into your IRA account possibly. Sometimes we help clients take money that they've saved in those retirement accounts and actually turn them into private personal pensions that guarantee them an amount of money every month for the rest of their lives. So Mark, this is kind of like trying on a pair of shoes. In fact, I just bought a new pair of shoes yesterday. The ones that fit you are going to be different from the ones that fit Ben or Martha or Sarah. What I'd recommend that you do is do what so many other people do every month. Sit down with us at WealthCare. And we'll go through the process of designing a retirement income plan specifically for you. There's no cost for that at the Wealth Care Corporation because we don't know yet if we can help you. But it'll give you a lot of clarity about what is possible. We'll figure out if we can help you and how we can get you the most income from your retirement.
Keeping up with your medical appointments and your financial appointments as well with J. Barry Watts right here. One final question in from Clark in Seymour, Missouri, and Barry says, the idea of a big market drop really makes me uncomfortable now that I'm within a few years of retirement. How should I start repositioning my assets? Should I be doing that?
Well, Ralph, I think that it should make Clark uncomfortable to face a big market drop in retirement. And so, Clark, what I would suggest that you need to do is you need to first figure out of however much money you have, whether it's $250,000 or $2 million, how much of that could go down in value before you would get uncomfortable. And somewhere in there, there's a number for you, 10% or 20% or 30% or whatever. You need to figure out where that number is and just draw a line and say, look, below this number, I'm not willing to risk any of it. And that tells you the amount of money that you should have in what we call a protected principal program. Now, protected principal programs are those where you can't lose a dime of your principal. And that allows you to take your other money, use it in the stock market where it will go up and down. You'll have some great seasons of gain, hopefully, but you'll have some difficult times of loss as well. And that's what I would suggest to someone who's in your shoes, Clark.
All right, the discussion on repositioning your assets. And Barry, once again, terrific questions, terrific answers from
You know, the
Barry
answers
Watts.
are only good because the questions are good. We got the best kind of viewers here in Southwest Missouri.
Sure do. Good mix of inquiries to you, Barry. Well, if you want to know some ways to generate your lifetime income, reduce that big tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle you want in retirement, reach out now to Barry and start planning for your ideal retirement. For Barry Watts and the whole team at the Wealth Care Corporation, this is Ralph Hipp, and Barry and I sure wish you a healthy and happy journey to and through your retirement.